And coming to this type 2 driver. Type 2 driver name is what? Native API network driver, native API driver. So coming to this native API driver, in case of native API driver, what happens here? When your Java application, if it want to talk with database, in case of type 2 driver, if your Java application, if it want to talk with database, in case of type 2, in case of type 2, if your Java application, if your Java application, if you have fields here, so these fields, if you want to store or if you want to retrieve any data from database, in case of type 2. In case of type 2 driver, your client application, this one is our client application. If your application, if it is there in some server, some ABC server, if your application, if it is there in machine, if it is there in machine A, if your database, if it is there in machine B, here by using type 2 driver, what you can do? You can use your application in one machine and your database you can use in another machine. Okay, so by using this native API driver, what we can do? We can make remote calls also. Means we can call another machine database also here. But in case of type 1 driver, we have limitation. Only it is useful for standalone. Your application and database should be there in same machine. But coming to this type 2 driver, your application can be there in one machine and your database can be there in another machine. Okay, so from here, when your Java application, if it want to talk with database, in case of type 2 driver, your Java application means your client requires database native API requires here. Your database native API to make calls to the database, your Java application requires your database native API. So using your database native API, this Java application will make calls on database. It will make calls by using which calls? There is one call level interface. By using this call level interface, it will make calls to your database C or C++ functions. Databases usually they used to made by using C. So if Java application, if it want to talk with your C application, database made by using C only. So wherever your Java application, if it want to talk with internal C functions, by using this call level interface, your Java application will talk with your database. But to make calls by using this call level interface, your Java application requires your database native API libraries required here, native API libraries. By using this native API libraries, your client application can make calls to the database. And compare with type 1 driver, JDBC, ODBC driver, it will give the better performance. Okay, directly your Java application will talk with whom? It will talk with CLI, means call level interface. Call level interface. This call level interface is useful for talking with C or C++ functions. When your Java application, if it want to talk with your database vendor C functions or C++ functions, by using this call level interface, it will talk with these functions. Okay, in case of type 2 driver, it will happen. We know right about type 1 driver. In case of type 1 driver, application need to talk with ODBC application, then ODBC need to talk with your database application. In case of type 1 driver, your application need to talk with ODBC. ODBC will behave like a mediator between database and your Java application. But coming to this type 2 driver, directly your Java application can talk with database. And it is useful for standalone and as well as for web applications also. It is useful for standalone access. You can use it for standalone access and as well as you can use it for remote access also. You can make standalone access and remote access. Means in single machine you can use, or else you can use it for multiple machines. You can keep your database in one machine, your application in another machine, and you can access. So remote access also they are providing here in case of type 2 driver. Okay. Then coming to type 3 driver, if your Java application, if it want to talk with database, type 3 driver name is what? Network pure Java driver. Network pure Java driver. And the last one is pure Java driver. Okay, or you can call it as thin driver, and this one you can call it as third party drivers. Okay, so in case of type 3 driver, what happens here? When your Java application, if it want to talk with database, in case of type 3, driver, if the driver is type 3 driver, okay, your Java application, if it want to talk with the database, you need to call first your database application server. You need to call first database application server, you need to call. Later the database application server will make calls on database. First we need to call database application server here, database application server. Then this database application server will make calls on database finally. Then this database will give response to this application server. Then this application server will give response to the user. So here one third party database application server we requires here. So this database application server need to get connection from database. That connections it need to provide to the Java application. And your Java application, if it want to make any calls, first it need to call this database application server. Then this application server will pass that same queries to database. So here what we required here from client side, what we required here, and from server side what we required here, to make calls to this database application server, this application server specific database application server jars required here. Your client required database application server jars. Then by using that jars, he can access the functions of database application server. Then this database application server will make calls on database. So then again this database application server is have dependency. Which dependency it have? Again it requires database functions. So here this application server requires database vendor specific jars. So for this application server they have dependency of database jars, and your application it have dependency of database application. So then this one will behave like a third party here. It will behave like third party here. In case of type 3 driver, your Java application need to access third party database application server. Then this database application server will make calls on database. So from your client application to access this database application server, we required this application server jar files here. And this database application server, if it want to talk with database, it requires your database libraries here. Okay. So here we have dependency of database application server, and you can use it for standalone and as well as remote access also. You can use it for standalone and remote access also. Okay.
What is the advantage of type 3 driver?
It's a third party one. Okay. Finally type 4 driver. Type 4 driver is pure Java driver. We don't require any third party support in case if you go through pure Java driver. In case if you go through pure Java driver, we don't require any support, and that driver is, this pure Java driver is protocol protocol specific driver. Okay, protocol specific driver. Protocol specific. So in case of this pure Java driver, what happens? Okay, we have many database vendors, like rkill is one vendor, mysql is one vendor, right? We have rkill, mysql, and we have db2. Okay, we have SQL server, many database vendors we have. So whenever your Java application, if it want to talk with any one of this database, one database vendor will choose one type of protocol. Okay, if it is a rkill will use rkill requires protocol. If it is a mysql will use one type of protocol. So just what this Java application need to do here, this Java application, by using that protocol, it need to make a call on server. Using protocol, it need to make a calls. Using protocol, it need to make calls on database. If you go through type 4 driver, let's say if rkill is using one protocol, something thin. By using that thin protocol, it need to make a call on database. Then it will give response to the vendor. It will give response to the client. When you make a call on database, that call it need to send in the form of protocol. That protocol it will send it to database. So then by using this protocol, it will understand what is the requirement of Java. So by using network protocol, when it transfer data here, what it will do? From that protocol, it will read data and it will pass to your database. Finally, it will give response in the form of same protocol. So that finally what we required from client side to understand these protocols, database vendor specific jar files we required here. Database vendor protocol specific jars required here. To understand that protocols, whatever the database vendor designed protocol specific jars, that jar files must we need to add for this client application. Okay, it's a pure Java driver and it is recommended for enterprise applications. It is recommended not only for standalone and remote access. It is useful for enterprise applications. Enterprise in the sense business. Okay, it is mostly recommended driver and a lightweight driver. This thin driver is lightweight driver. Okay, and it is a pure Java driver. We don't have any dependencies. We don't have any dependencies on native functions. We don't have any dependencies on like ODBC, and we don't have any dependencies on third-party servers. Directly by using network protocols, your Java application can make a call to Java application. Then this Java application can give response to your database application can give response to the Java application. Internally, actually, what they will use to make protocols, how we can talk by using protocols in Java, using RMI, right? So by using RMI calls, by using RMI remote method invocation, it will make a call on database side Java application. It will make a call on database side RMI application. Then when it make a call, it will give response to the Java side application. Okay, internally it will use your remote method invocations. Remotely it will access your Java functions by using a specific protocol. Okay, so in this way, in case of type 4 driver, it will talk with database. This one is type 4 driver. Okay, anyways, we know the 4 types of drivers. Okay, so how to use these drivers, and to use these drivers, which kind of code we should write? In JDBC there are some important interfaces and classes. So coming to the first class, the first main important class is driver manager class. So this driver manager is a class. It's a fully implemented class. It's a pure class. So this driver manager class is for what? To load or to register to register driver. This one is for to register driver, and this one is for to get connection. We have to use this to get connection. To get connection and to register driver, we have to use this driver manager class. And there is one interface, driver interface. It is a interface. There is a driver interface. This driver interface is for what? Every database vendor vendor must need to implement driver interface. Every database vendor must need to implement this driver interface. Then only you can able to make calls on that particular database. And there is one more important class, statement. This statement also a interface. Okay, sorry. Connection. Connection interface. Connection interface. Useful to get connection from database. It is useful to get connection from database, connection interface. And one more interface we have, statement. This statement interface is useful. It is useful to pass SQL statements to database. SQL exception, it's a class. SQL exception is a class. This class is useful in our JDBC programming. This class is useful to understand database level exceptions. If your database, if it throws any exceptions because of your SQL queries while executing your SQL statements, if there is any issue in your SQL statements, always database it used to send us SQL exception. So by reading that SQL exception, we can understand which kind of problem arising inside database. So these are the main important classes we are going to use for our JDBC applications. The main important classes are driver manager. Driver manager class is useful to register the driver, and it is useful to get the connection. And driver class, this driver class interface is a interface, and for this driver interface every database vendor need to provide implementations. Directly driver is not useful, but driver interface implementations are useful. Who will provide these implementations? Your database vendors. Database vendors must they need to provide this driver implementations. And the connection, coming to this connection interface, it is useful to get connection from database. So actually the combination of driver manager class we have to use. Using this driver manager class only we will get connection here. So after once getting this connection, using this connection we can create statements. So the statements are for what? Those are useful to pass SQL statements to database. Finally, these SQL exceptions. While executing that SQL statements, if there is any problem in your statement, database will throw us SQL exceptions. Okay, by reading the SQL exceptions, we can understand which kind of problem we are getting from the database. Okay.